Morning, glory, America. Hugh Hewitt here. It's Thursday. Thanks to Colonel Kurt Schlichter for sitting in for me yesterday. I was on late duty on Tuesday night, hosting the Nixon Seminar, chaired by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. The great man himself came out, so I will play a little bit of that, but I was up very late, and Colonel Kurt came in for me, and I appreciate it very much. And the studio's still smoking slightly, but it's always great to have Kurt in. Also smoking, Mitch McConnell. He is on fire as he slices and dices the $1.9 trillion, well, it's a garbage bill. It's absolutely a dumpster on fire, and Mitch McConnell is taking it apart bit by bit. He remains the greatest legislative leader the Republicans have had in either house of Congress in my lifetime. Here's Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor yesterday, cut number 9.
What the American people need are fast-acting plans to get schools reopened now, get laid-off workers back into jobs, and finish the fight against this virus right now. The Democrats have instead drawn up a liberal omnibus to fund miscellaneous government spending over the next decade. So we're adding all this money to the national debt in the name of a rescue package, with most of the money being spent out far in the future. So, Mr. President, that's why there was bipartisan opposition over in the House. That's why aspects of the House bill are already dropping like flies before this thing even hits the Senate floor. A pet project for the San Francisco Bay Area, gone. Special upgrades for a bridge connecting New York to Canada, gone. Even CNN had to admit these were, quote, controversial, end quote. Senator Sanders' far-left minimum wage policy that would have killed 1.4 million jobs just as we try to recover, that appears to be gone too, at least for now. According to public reports, right now, as we speak, several of our Democratic colleagues are frantically trying to trim back other crazy provisions. The runaway government bailouts, the policies that will keep workers at home when we should be focusing on rehiring. Just a few days ago, President Biden's chief of staff bragged that this smorgasbord of borrowed money will add up to, quote, the most progressive domestic legislation in a generation, end quote. So that's what you get when the Democratic leader persuades all of my distinguished friends across the aisle that their first undertaking as Senate committee chairman should be to outsource all their gavels to the House.
He is just on fire. Then he went on Fox with Martha McCallum, Cocaine Mitch did, and summed up what the Biden team is doing for the Republican Party, cut number 7.
Well, look, I think the actions of the new Democratic administration are unifying the Republican Party. We've had some internal back and forth that has been widely covered, but nothing has unified the Republican Party in both the House and the Senate faster than reacting to this new left-wing administration. So we're looking forward. We're not going to look backward. We're looking forward, dealing with the problems America has today, not the problems it had yesterday. And as I said, I have sensed in our conference, and I think in the House Republican conference as well, a new sense of unity pulling together to oppose this left-wing administration.
Right. He also went on to talk about the burgeoning crisis at the border, and it's huge. Mitch McConnell, cut number 8 with Martha McCallum.
Beats me. Secretary Mayorkas, the head of the Homeland Security, says there's no crisis at the border. Well, that's absolutely incorrect. And the crisis was created by the administration sending a message to desperate people who want to come here that just hang on, you'll get in sooner or later. And of course, the Mexican government then will become less cooperative. One thing the previous administration did an excellent job of, by any objective standard, was border security. And all of that is being undone very quickly in this new administration. They own this crisis at the border. They created it, and they could stop it if they chose to.
Now, I also want to point out, President Biden went out yesterday and blasted Texas Governor Abbott's policy on COVID. This is what he said, cut number 10, making sure that Texas stays red for generations.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters. I carry a card with me, I don't have it, I put it on my desk. As of yesterday, we had lost 511,874 Americans. We're going to lose thousands more. This will not occur. We'll not have everybody vaccinated until sometime in the summer. We have the vaccine to do it. Getting a shot in someone's arm and getting a second shot, you're going to take time. And it's critical that they follow the science. Wash your hands, hot water, do it frequently, wear a mask, and stay socially distanced. And I know you all know that. I wish the heck some of our elected officials knew it. So thank you very much.
So Texans are Neanderthals. Hey, Neanderthal Texans, what do you think about that? 1-800-520-1234. I know some Texas Neanderthals. I do. They root for the Aggies. I mean, they root for the, what do they call them, horns? Hooked up horns? The hooked up horns down in Texas there? I don't know. But John Cornyn, great senator, one of our favorite guests on the Hugh Hewitt Show, from Texas, former Supreme Court justice on the Texas Supreme Court, gave a presser right after Joe Biden insulted his state. Cut number 2.
Well, President Biden has a lot of problems to take care of. He's got a crisis at the border that he calls a challenge and not a crisis, dismantling all of our immigration laws and protections to protect our border. And so I don't think he's got a lot to say about preaching to my state about how we've handled this COVID-19 virus. Part of the problem here that Senator Scott and others have pointed out is that many states have been overly restrictive in terms of opening the economy, safely going back to school and the like. And what they want, because they have not been able to meet their revenue needs, they want the federal government to bail them out. So I don't think Washington has a lot to say to states like my state about what the appropriate reopening measures are. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to wear a mask, you can still wear a mask. But at some point, the government needs to quit making arbitrary rules that do not have any demonstrable connection with the public health.
You know what's amazing? There's a story this morning in the New York Post that more than 100 illegal immigrants tested positive after they crossed into Texas, and they've been released. Positive coronavirus carriers. It's almost unbelievable. I also have a story about a terrible tragedy in California where a van packed full of undocumented, they pulled down a portion of the old fence. It looked like it was about 8 feet tall. It wasn't Trump's fence. They drove a van through, packed with 44 people, got hit by a semi, 15 are dead, many children. And you look at that old fence, you realize Dwayne could have pushed it over. Seriously, Dwayne could have done it. You could have leaned on it and pushed it over. And people don't want to build the fence. Now, notice that they had to pull it down to get through. You put up a good fence, they can't do that. Also want to bring your attention to the Honduras coronavirus. 172,000 cases. Now, this is underreported. Honduras is absolutely paralyzed, and they're out of food. So I have just tweeted out, and I'm urging you to go to HughHewitt.com and contribute to the Food for the Poor campaign that I run in March. Now, Food for the Poor sponsors this every March. I'm not obliged to contribute, but the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I made the biggest contribution we've ever made to Food for the Poor this year because we know what coronavirus has done in Honduras. Shattered the economy, shattered relief programs. Millions of people, I believe it's more than 9 million people, are hungry. Many of them are starving. Hundreds of thousands of them are children. And Food for the Poor is on the case. They are sending the basic calories to survive and the clean water to survive. But they need every contribution. Could you please go to HughHewitt.com right now and step up and step in as much as you can, as early as you can today. Make it your Lenten sacrifice. HughHewitt.com, food for the poor, relief at the top. Come right back.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He's Andrew Cuomo. He's like a mafia don. He doesn't go out of anywhere unless it's in a box. Tell us, what's the truth, Joe Piscopo?
You know, Seb, he is. He's the Terminator of politics. And he really is. He'll be back. I'll be back. I mean, you know, and then I love everybody's making the mafia references because he's Italian. I don't get offended by it, but he's like the Sollozzo character. Remember?
Yes, Virgil Sollozzo.
I don't like violence, Michael. It's bad for business, you know? I mean, and then or how about this line? You want to see Governor Cuomo say that the bad news for me and bad news for you. You know, it's like a character. However, let me put this caveat out there, if I may, my friend. When I knew Andrew 30 years ago, 20 years ago, he was always nice. He was always cordial. He was always a gentleman. That's the Andrew Cuomo I know. I don't know who this guy is now, you know? And
really?
Michael Goodwin. Yeah, honestly. And
so you're saying he's changed?
I don't look. I talked to Kieran Lawler, who's up in Albany, one of the assemblymen, and Kieran said, "Joe, why are you saying nice things about Andrew Cuomo?" I said, "I'm just saying when I met him, he was nice." Then I talked to Michael Goodwin this morning, that we know and love from the New York Post, and Michael says he has changed in office. I do know this about him. First of all, he was always nice to me, and I always open the mic up to join me on the air. But I'm not Seb Gorka. I like to think I'm a good radio guy, but I'm not. He said to me, he goes, "Joe, I love you, but you know Dr. Gorka." He told me that. No, not really, but the thing is, what he did was with the women was one thing, and he apologized, and we have to accept that. I think easy for me to say, but it was nice that he did that. Not what you know what this means. The Italians go like this. You and the Italians go like this. They not one question from any reporter about the nursing home debt. Right. Did you notice that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of studies, one of them was led by the black Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who made the argument that unskilled illegal aliens pose competition to unskilled black and brown workers. And Coretta Scott King once wrote a letter, I believe it was you who brought my attention to that. I wrote a letter to Congress urging them not to relax sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens because of the threat that they pose to black and brown workers. That was Coretta Scott King writing that letter.
And there were a number of others, Barbara Jordan and others, of course, but this was at a time when many of our black leaders actually had true adult, sane concerns about the prospects of African Americans. These days, I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but if you take a look at our so-called black leaders, they're all in uniform lockstep with the principal interests of the Democratic Party, as opposed to the average American and average black American. We have had hearing after hearing at the Civil Rights Commission. There have been numerous hearings before Congress on this. The evidence is plain. Yes, you're going to get contrary arguments from people.
Hear that bass? Welcome back. It's Hugh Hewitt. Got the word today. Nobody can replace Rush Limbaugh. Nobody. But at radio stations across the country, many program directors are making the choice to put my show in Rush's old slot. I'm tremendously honored by that and thankful. No one's as funny as Rush. No one's as off the cuff as Rush. No one's going to have the devoted 30 million listeners that Rush had at his peak, or 20 million, 25 million at his low point. I mean, just consistently delivering between 20 and 30 million listeners for 20 years. But I'll do my best wherever they put me on, and thank you. Every morning at this hour, I tell you about the markets from yesterday, brought to you by Birch Gold. If you haven't got a portion of your IRA in Birch Gold, you ought to go to hughgold.com or text my name Hugh to 474747, and they will send you a free information kit on how to diversify. If you just want to buy gold, same deal. hughgold.com, text my name to 474747, my first name, Hugh, H-U-G-H. Bad day on the markets again yesterday. Dow down 121, NASDAQ off 361, S&P down 50. I now own 3 stocks. I've diversified. I got a note from my brokerage house. They don't know I own mutual funds and other stuff, but I've only got one account with them, and they see all you own is Amazon. And so to get them off my advisor's back, I bought a couple other stocks, Palantir and Penn. Both are relatively new offerings, and so I have a little bit of both just to get them off his back. But Amazon got shattered yesterday. I'm not worried in the least. You can't destroy the future. But the inflation fears are rocking the markets. And if you are afraid of inflation, you buy gold. Gold is at $17.11 right now. The 10-year Treasury jumped to 1.47. It will soon have tripled from its 0.6 low of 6 months ago. Still great rates available, but inflation fears are out there. Jerome Powell's going to have to reassure markets like every week. I'm not going to raise rates. I'm not going to raise rates because Joe Biden's bill is going to bring back inflation. People are scared to death. Their wealth is going to be wiped out. Inflation kills the middle class. And that's why people are turning to gold, and you might want to do it today. Go to hughgold.com or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. A lot of show coming up. Michael Oren is joining us. Dan Crenshaw from Texas. You know Dan, the SEAL, who's now the Congressman. Representative Mike Gallagher is joining us as well. I'm going to play you a little bit of Gallagher in the next segment. C.J. Box is back today. Brand new book. I'm holding it right here, Dark Sky. This is a tremendous book. I like all the previous 20 Joe Pickett books. This is just tremendous. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg's going to like it. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's not a character in here, but a young billionaire who runs a social media platform is. So you make up your mind who he's talking about. Could be any old young billionaire with a social media platform from the Silicon Valley. And Pete Stauber of Minnesota is going to be their next governor. If my sources are right, he's joining me as well today. So you don't want to go anywhere except to askahost.com. I'm going to sit back with my favorite adult beverage, which is coffee, on Saturday night at 8 p.m. and take any questions from a small audience. We're limiting the number of people who come in. You have to go to askahost.com, starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. And We'll sit down and we will talk about it. I heard Kurt Schlichter talking about this yesterday. Colonel Kurt is a great host. In fact, he's too good. We're going to have to ban him. We're going to have to go find Matt Cunningham, who may have been the worst. I love Matt, but he may have been the worst guest host in the history of the Hugh Hewitt Show. You know, yesterday, Generalissimo, you awake? Did he come in today? Did Dwayne come in today? I don't know if he came in. Oh, yeah, okay. Yesterday, the fetching Mrs. Hewitt asked me, do you keep a list of interns? I said, why would we want to remember interns?
We've had probably over 100, and I think I can remember 10.
Yeah, we don't want to remember interns, but we do want to remember bad guest hosts.
We remember the ones that were successful that actually do things for us afterwards.
Yeah,
those we remember.
That's it. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of studies, one of them was led by the black Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who made the argument that unskilled illegal aliens pose competition to unskilled black and brown workers. And Coretta Scott King once wrote a letter. I believe it was you who brought my attention to that. I wrote a letter to Congress urging them not to relax sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens because of the threat that they pose to black and brown workers. That was Coretta Scott King writing that letter.
And there were a number of others, Barbara Jordan and others, of course, but this was at a time when many of our black leaders actually had true, adult, sane concerns about the prospects of African Americans. These days, I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but if you take a look at our so-called black leaders, they're all in uniform lockstep with the principal interests of the Democratic Party as opposed to the average American and average black American. We've had hearing after hearing at the Civil Rights Commission. There have been numerous hearings before Congress on this. The evidence is plain. Yes, you're going to get contrary arguments from people. I would urge your listeners, take a look at the data. One of the pieces of evidence before the Civil Rights Commission is that 40% of the full 18-point decline in labor rates among blacks prior to the Trump administration came from competition from illegal immigrants. That's astonishing. That was turned around under Trump. We actually had a complete reversal. We had the lowest unemployment rates among blacks in history, and especially among young blacks. And labor participation rates for young blacks was going through the roof. And now, just because Trump implemented this, we're reversing this, and we're damaging the prospects in a time when we can't afford it in the midst of a pandemic.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
As the Wall Street Journal editorial board points out, the Biden-Harris administration has changed to full-throated encouragement, though not before continuing to trash the Trump efforts. The White House is saying, you just heard Biden. Oh, the previous administration didn't contract for enough vaccine. We fixed all that. That's a lie. As the Wall Street Journal points out, the supply was ramping up very quickly. The real problem was the last mile of distribution controlled by the states. Governors like Cuomo tried to satisfy political constituencies that wanted early access to vaccines, adding complexity and bureaucracy that confused the public. Biden made the same mistake, asking states to give priority to educators, read teachers' unions, school staffers, and child care workers. That's arbitrary and unfair. A 30-year-old teacher who may still work remotely until September is at far less risk than a 50-year-old FedEx driver who interacts with customers all day. As the Wall Street Journal points out, the fairest, least political distribution standard is age. The Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed also contracted most of the vaccine supply for production before approval by the FDA. 200 million doses each of Pfizer and Moderna, and 100 million of Johnson & Johnson.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Andrew Cuomo was rewarded every single step of the way by mass media, by Hollywood, for his handling of the Chinese coronavirus. And here's a question.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Remember, Ask a Host is Saturday night, and you got to do it this Saturday night because Selection Sunday is coming up a week from Sunday. March Madness is back, and the best way to warm up for March Madness is going over to salemnow.com and watching Born to Win. Remember Jim Boeheim? Born to Lead. Jim Boeheim is the UConn coach. His backstory is amazing. Forced to lead his family after his dad died young. Underdog, Northeastern, then goes to UConn, turns the Huskies into a national power. And we got Coach K. We've got all sorts of people in this film, including his NBA superstars, Richard Hamilton, Ray Allen. I don't think they got any Cavaliers, but that's okay. They've got some amazing interviews, including Boeheim himself. And Born to Lead is a must-watch, inspiring movie. Hoops is the background against which character is often illuminated. And Jim Boeheim's character is amazing. Go to salemnow.com. Use my name, Hugh. Get a discount. But even if you forget Hugh and you put in Dennis or something like that, go watch this. Go watch Born to Lead. Great, great film. Please don't forget either, Food for the Poor. That banner is over at hughhewitt.com. I'm begging people. It is a nightmare there. It is a nightmare in Honduras brought about by COVID. It's already a fragile economy, disintermediation of food relief supplies because of the economic crackdown, breakdown. The death toll, they say, is only a few thousand. Nobody believes that. They're just not counting. They can't count. They don't have the medical infrastructure. But they know the economy's shuttered. The tourism business is shuttered. They need your help. They need my help. But Mr. Hewitt and I have stepped up. Already hundreds of you have given. Please, whether it's $5 or $500 or $5,000, Food for the Poor delivers the most bang for the buck of any international relief organization, period. No questions asked. They are the best. Just food. They don't care about your denomination. They don't care about your status. If you're hungry, they feed you. It's the gospel in action. So Mike Pompeo was on Fox with Lawrence Jones, with Hannity last night, and he said what all of us have seen. Cut number 25.
Yes, the Iranians, the Chinese, and the New York Times. A long list of people who didn't think much of America First foreign policy that I led under President Trump's direction. That's okay. We took good care of America, and I watch what this administration appears to be doing. It looks like a blame America First pattern that's already begun to take place.
So Sean Hannity asked him, you're running in 2024, Secretary Pompeo? Cut number 26.
Sean, I'm always up for a good fight. I care deeply about America. You and I have been part of the conservative movement for an awfully long time now. I aim to keep at it.
All right. I'll take that as a
is pretty,
strong
that's
maybe.
unambiguous. That's a strong yes. Secretary Pompeo joined me via the biggest Zoom call ever with Henry Kissinger and former National Security Advisor Mike Pompeo and a dozen of the finest young national security minds on the center-right side of the aisle. People like Matt Pottinger, people like next hour's Mike Gallagher. You can go to nixonseminar.com to see who's in the seminar. And the co-chairs are Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador O'Brien, and the honorary co-chairman is Dr. K, Henry Kissinger. And so I was going to just go right into Dr. Kissinger, and Mike Pompeo and I talked before, and he introduced Dr. Kissinger on Wednesday night. Here's what he said, cut number 27.
And welcome, everyone, to this inaugural event. It's a lot of fun to be with all of you. I know so many of you are doing such great work these past 4 years, and many of you before that. But it is an enormous honor to get a chance to introduce Dr. Kissinger, an amazing man who helped me so much in my time as Secretary of State when I was a CI director as well. We all know him. He was born not far from where I served in Germany. He was born in Bavaria, and I spent 3 years of my life as a young cavalry officer there. And he went on to become a refugee and then serve also in the United States Army, and had an amazing run as a national security advisor and as a Secretary of State, serving multiple presidents of the United States during an incredibly important time in American history. But then, Dr. Kissinger, that wasn't enough for you. Even today, government leaders all across the world, business people who are trying to conduct international business, all seek out Dr. Kissinger's advice on a wide range of issues. It will be an enormous benefit to each of us to get the chance to hear from him tonight and over the weeks ahead about all of the experiences that he had. I just want to take this moment to thank him personally, too, for such kindness and generosity to me during my time serving in the Trump administration, trying to execute America's foreign policy for those years. Thank you, Dr. Kissinger, and thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this important seminar. Thank you.
Well, let me thank, first of all, Mike Pompeo for his very generous introduction. We worked together in Washington in the previous administration, and he has performed great national services. And so it means a great deal to me to hear his kind remarks.
That's called a baton pass. The great Dr. Kissinger passing the baton to Mike Pompeo. Quite an endorsement there. The seminar went on for an hour and 15 minutes. We do it once a month. Dr. Kissinger won't be there most months. But I let some members of the seminar, as many as we had time for, ask a question. Most people were asking about Vietnam and China and the Soviet Union when it was still the Soviet Union. And Congressman Gallagher is the only elected official. He comes up, Congressman Gallagher does, with a question on artificial intelligence for 97-year-old Henry Kissinger. I almost went through the Zoom to strangle him. And not Kissinger, Gallagher. I said, artificial intelligence? Really? HK? Here is that 29.
China, Russia, and the U.S. have all identified artificial intelligence, or AI, as a potentially decisive resource in the 21st century balance of power. The National Commission on AI released its report this week, warning that China could pull ahead of American AI by the end of this decade. You have written extensively about the geopolitical and philosophical implications of AI. Given that China is likely to use this technology for nefarious purposes, how do you think we should think about this challenge and its place in the intensifying rivalry with China? How should the U.S. ensure ethical use of AI going forward?
Right there. Henry Kissinger is 97 years old. Artificial intelligence has been an issue for like 3 years. I'm the moderator of the Nixon Seminar, and I'm thinking to myself, I've guaranteed Dr. Kissinger a great show. I've got, 15 people, Pompeo and O'Brien and Matt Pottinger and Lanhee Chen and Morgan Ortega. I mean, I've got just A-teamers all over the place. And Mike Gallagher's an A-teamer. And so I don't know what Mike's going to ask. And he brings up artificial intelligence. My heart's in my throat. Here's Henry.
I'm going to try to keep all my future answers shorter than I've kept the previous ones. It's so excited being back at the Nixon Library and with my colleagues from Washington. My knowledge of artificial intelligence results from attending a speech at some conference where somebody spoke about artificial intelligence, about which I had never thought before. And it struck me that the impact of that presentation on the evolution of history was very crucial. And therefore, I had to learn something about it. And so I went to Eric Schmidt, former Google head, and to a man called John Huttenlocker, who is provost of MIT and in charge of all their computer work. And we've been meeting for the last 4 years, every Sunday. So the impact, I think, of artificial intelligence is that on a ultimate level, since the Enlightenment, the West has learned by reason and by the evolution of experiments. In the artificial intelligence age, one learns by the experience of results without knowing exactly how the process operates. That is, that if you can work the right algorithms and the right knowledge that are relevant to that field, you can solve problems which have proved insoluble. So if you ask me a strategic question, namely, can we afford another country to get ahead of us in that field? The answer by definition is no. We have to stay ahead in that field, because if we are not, we do not know what answers will emerge out of. I could give you a number of examples, but this is the conclusion to which I've come. So a commitment to developing artificial intelligence knowledge in its field and to apply it to a wide range of fields, especially to the fields that have strategic and foreign policy implications, is absolutely imperative in our relation with any major country.
I got to tell you, enormous moderator relief after that question. So we've got 15 people. I'm in charge of the zoo, right? I'm in charge of the zoo, and I'm not a member of the seminar. I do broadcasting, punditry, politics, and radio. I do television and writing in the Washington Post. I don't do national security except as an amateur. These are 15 professionals. And Gallagher comes up with AI for Henry Kissinger. I'm going to myrtleize him. But of course, Kissinger has been meeting every Sunday for 4 years with the provost of MIT or Eric Schmidt of Google. So he's kind of briefed. He's up to date. That was amazing. Not as amazing, though, as ReliefFactor.com. There it is at that time of the day where I go into my bag of ReliefFactor.com and I realized it was pouring in Southern California yesterday, so I stayed inside and read Chuck Box and C.J. Box's new book, Dark Sky. And they're my 4 Relief Factor. Relief Factor is never in the C.J. Box novels, I got to say. But they got rid of the corrupt prosecutor, thank God. Well, Karen Kirkman Resveratrol Omega. Woo, that's hot coffee. I can even take it with hot coffee. Normally, it's lukewarm coffee. Karen Kirkman Resveratrol Omega. Support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. Coach Meyer, if you're listening, I want you to have that in the Jacksonville Jaguars locker room. Just have bowls of it. Perfectly legal, perfectly safe, and it's perfectly great for everyone. Young and old, anyone who's working out, anyone who's going through the Urban Meyer drills, anybody who's on the football field, anybody who's driving a long way to work, relieffactor.com is for you. Coming up after the break, Michael Oren. We're getting close to elections in Israel. He joins us, the former ambassador of Israel to the United States, joins us live. It's about, 2 o'clock in Israel? I don't know. And we will talk about 2 p.m. in the afternoon. We will talk about what it looks like for Netanyahu 2 weeks ahead of the election, 3 weeks ahead of the election, I guess. And then we come back with Dan Crenshaw next hour as we go out. Food for the poor. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. I'm begging you. It is a disaster down there. They need your help. Don't leave home without giving $10, $100. Talk it over with the spouse. Talk it over with the kids. Say it's Lent. We're going to make something that's a sacrificial gift for Lent to feed others. We might tighten the belt a little this weekend. Food for the Poor banner. It's a red big block banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. You cannot miss it. Come right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Born to Lead and Salem Now.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Andrew Cuomo was rewarded every single step of the way by mass media, by Hollywood, for his handling of the Chinese coronavirus. And here's a question that we brought up earlier. I don't know if we actually ordered his book or not. How did he get away with writing a book in the midst of a scandal? In the midst of a crisis? Could you imagine if Donald Trump published a book in the midst of the Chinese coronavirus? Andrew Cuomo, Cut 51, says, who cares people died in nursing homes or hospitals? The Hillary Clinton way of looking at it. What difference does it make? Play tape.
But we're below the national average in number of deaths in nursing homes. But who cares? 33, 28, died in a hospital, died in a nursing home. They died.
So why does that matter? That's actually a really important point. Since we do not have in any form of an honest press in our country, a follow-up question would say, well, Mr. Cuomo, let me tell you why that matters. Because in densely populated nursing homes of people over the age of 80 with comorbidities, if you were putting infected patients into those environments, it matters a lot. Whereas in hospitals, they're far more equipped to handle people that are currently fighting upper respiratory illnesses or diseases than a nursing home. Wouldn't you agree with that, Mr. Cuomo?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.
Welcome back, America. As you've heard me say for years, the International Criminal Court in The Hague is not a court. It's a mini UN. It's got all the flaws of the UN, but with prosecutorial power. and this week it announced an investigation into, quote, Israeli-Palestinian war crimes, claiming jurisdiction over this. I'm joined by former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Ambassador Oren, welcome. What do you make of this development?
What can I say? It's anti-Semitic. It's singling Israel out. It is claiming that Israel doesn't have a judicial system that's capable of examining itself, even though our military and civilian systems are universally respected and investigated all the charges that have been leveled against us. And on top of everything else, the ICC is equating Israel with the terrorist organization Hamas that fired thousands and thousands of rockets at millions of innocent civilians. It's extraordinary.
Now, last year, the Trump administration sanctioned the ICC because they were attempting to prosecute American troops. And I don't know if Team Biden will come to Israel's assistance here, but will Israel sanction the ICC?
Well, we don't have many leverages over the ICC, but the United States certainly does. And I'll tell you a story from the time when I was ambassador, when we had a similar case, a threat of the ICC to investigate Israel for war crimes. And I went to the White House, and I brought to the White House a copy of a piece of legislation that was passed in 2002, Hugh. It was called American Service Members Protection Act.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You know it. And
yes.
What does it say? That any action by the ICC to investigate or prosecute American service members, this is on the eve of the Iraqi invasion, would evoke sanctions by the United States by any state that cooperated with the ICC. And this would also not only protect American service members, but allied soldiers.
You know, Ambassador, back in the days when I was a law student, Jake Stein taught international law at Michigan 1,000 years ago, and he really believed in international organizations. And I'd always say, no. I mean, no. They are always corrupted by the left, and the UN among them. And people say, why don't we want to join the ICC? Why don't we want to join the Law of the Sea Treaty? They're always corrupted. In fact, your Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said this yesterday. We got the tape of Benjamin Netanyahu? Apparently not. So I guess every international organization, and you were part of them, obviously, I just don't believe they can work.
No, so either. But here's the end of the story. So I brought the American Service Members Protection Act to the White House. And the response was, well, what do you want us to do? Sanction Norway? And I said, yes. Sanction Norway. And everybody laughed. So that's a big difference between what happened, last year when the United States threatened to sanction the ICC. This is American law, Hugh. I think American law.
The ICC has gotten worse with every iteration. Now, Ambassador Oren, before I let you go, we are 3 weeks away from elections. What does it feel like to you?
It feels like a non-election. Everyone's got election fatigue here on top of corona fatigue. It's interesting. There's no electoral posters. There's almost no commercials on TV. The general feeling here is that we're going to go to another round of elections. This elections are also going to prove inconclusive. There's no front runner outside of Benjamin Netanyahu.
But also no 61 vote coalition in the offing?
It doesn't look like either side has a great ability to put together the 61, which means, again, another round of election. And I think that's going to continue as long as Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, is prime minister. Because for the last 20 years, that's what almost every election is about, Bibi or not.
Now, Bennett was in the Bibi coalition at one point, was he not?
And he'll be in it again.
Oh, doesn't that get him to 61?
And perhaps, but it depends how many the New Hope Party gets, how much Yesh Atid, the Future Party, gets. There are many different polls. But the fact of the matter is, we're now in the position of I will not sit with him. So Bennett says he's not going to sit with Yair Lapid, and Gideon Sa'ar of the New Hope says he won't sit with Bibi, and everyone's not going to sit with everybody else. We'll see whether that changes once we get into the coalition negotiations. But right now, if you ask me, nobody's got the 61.
Michael Oren, no one has ever studied. I know British history pretty well. I'm trying to think of 4 elections in 2 years. And I know that Peel went to the country over the Corn Laws. And I know Disraeli, Gladstone went to the country over reform. And they might have had 2 elections or 3 elections in 2 years. I've never heard of 4 elections in a parliamentary democracy before. I mean, a real one, not a fake one.
Not even in Italy.
Yeah.
Not even in Italy.
So
the Italians.
Does it leave a scar, or is it just another, this is nothing compared to a war?
No, it leaves a scar in the sense that the actual system gets discredited, and people get disinterested.
Well, why don't you raise the level that it takes to get into the parliament to 5% like any normal system?
Yeah, well, that comes up every time. The last time they tried to do that, the Arab Party got 3 times as many seats. So it doesn't always work.
I see.
To the advantage to say, Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. It doesn't always.
Now,
changing.
Even if that happened, would that happen again? Would the joint list go to 5% and the Orthodox parties drop?
Well, it's worth looking at. You're right.
Michael Oren, always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll talk to you next week as we get closer. And the ICC, well, you folks don't pay any attention to them except to announce them. I'm coming right back with Congressman Dan Crenshaw from Texas. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I have a list of 32 questions that you should ask any relative or friend and send the list to any relative or friend to find out if that relative or friend is a liberal or a leftist. It's powerful stuff. I'm going to read to you the questions. I actually read it last night. I read it when it's published because when you see your work published, it looks different, as it were. And here, I'm going to call it up from, well, I would if my computer worked. It renders that difficult. That's too bad. All right, I'll get it up somehow. There are 32 questions, and I worked very hard in phrasing it in such a way as to make it completely clear so that the reader does not have to ask, well, what does that mean? What do you mean by that? And then we can work on it. And, well, you know what the magic is, my friends, when you can't do something on your computer. What you do is turn it off, reboot it. Your Windows, if it's Windows, your Windows system wants to be renewed. It is a spiritual act on the part of your computer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We find out 2 weeks ago from his assistant on that call to Democrat lawmakers, oh yeah, we hid the evidence from the feds. Joe, if you hid the evidence from the feds of a crime, if I did, guess what? The feds are on our door at 6 a.m. with AR-15s. Is this man made of Teflon? Is he the new Teflon Don?
No, I got to tell you, honestly, and it's so tough for me now. So I talk to you as a Salem brother, I try to stick up for the Italians, and I'm getting killed there. We got Fauci, we got Pelosi, we got de Blasio, we got Cuomo. I'm getting killed over here, my friend. I'm just telling you. It's
got to be tough.
It's tough now. And I want to say something nice about Dr. Fauci. Boom. They'll call up. Everybody calls them, tell me what's up. And with Andrew, though, he is a political animal along the lines, the old world political animal, and I mean that he's very savvy. He's Nancy Pelosi, he's Chuck Schumer. You may not like these people. They are vicious when it comes to politics. You know that. So I don't think you ever count them out. I think, I'm telling you what, even with all those nursing home deaths, and our hearts go out to every family. Janice Dean,
yes.
Can you get more of a sweet person than Janice Dean? How great is she? And what she had to go through, that alone, I think Andrew owes an apology for that as well. I'm amazed that they didn't.
That's the point. Where's his apology to the families, to the loved ones, like Janice Dean, who lost her parents-in-law to the COVID virus because of this governor?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Well, my question is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about systemic racism, and I mentioned one of your nuggets that actually more white people, unarmed white people, are killed than black people. And you say, of course they are, because there's more white people in this country than black people. So what's the answer to that? I didn't know how to come back on that.
Real simple. White people are what percentage of the population? Around 61%. What percentage of the homicides are committed by white people? 50%, meaning they commit, as a percentage of their population, less murders than blacks do at 13%. We commit almost half of the homicides at 13%. So at 13%, we're far, far more likely to be an offender and a victim of a homicide. A young black man is anywhere from 7 to 10 times more likely, Larry, to be the victim of a homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black man. The leading cause of death for young white men, Larry, is accidents, like car accidents or pool drownings. The leading cause of death, preventable or non-preventable for young black men, homicide, almost always at the hands of another black man. That is why the police are there. It is true that the police are 2.5 times more likely to kill a black suspect. It's also true, as I said, that a young black suspect is 7 or 8 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide. That's why the cops are there. You look at a city, Larry, like St. Louis. St. Louis is about 45% black. About 300 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Baltimore, 65% black. About 400 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Chicago, a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides black on black. Tell your friend that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden announcing yesterday, here's what he said about enough vaccines for every adult in America in a matter of weeks.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
Now, while that's good news, he can't help himself in taking pot shots at the previous administration that has delivered the vaccines to the world. They laughed. They mocked Trump when he set a target date of having a vaccine at the end of 2020. Well, guess what? We got the vaccine by the end of 2020. You know why? Because of President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Remember Kamala Harris, who said she might not even take the vaccine that was recommended by the Trump administration?
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to my 400 affiliates across the United States. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening. Joined by Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas. Good morning, Congressman. Great to have you on.
Morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
C.J. Box is coming up next hour, and I've never asked you, do you read thrillers? Are you a thriller reader?
I'd like to be, but no, I do not.
Okay, start with C.J. It's not SEALs and it's not spies. He's just a game warden, but start with C.J. Box. So, Congressman, before I go to your anti-lockdown act, which is overdue and very timely, and I want to talk about it, Mike Pompeo got asked by Sean Hannity last night if he's running in 2024. So I got to ask you, have you ruled out a presidential run in 2024?
I'd say yeah, pretty much. It doesn't seem very tempting.
You're kidding me. People are expecting you to run.
I don't think so. I don't know. It's not tempting. It's also 4 years away. I don't think it's. I think we're tripping all over ourselves trying to figure out who's going to be on the ticket in 4 years, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
Do you know why that is? It has the feel, Congressman, of an end. It has the feel of W after 2 terms and Obama after 2 terms, where you know that the incumbent won't be in the race. And so the race starts very early because you're not running against an incumbent with the uphill that it matters. It's not 2012 and it's not 2004. People assume Joe Biden won't be running again. That's why there's speculation.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment. I don't know. I think there'd still be speculation, but I think you're right. I mean, I think Joe Biden would probably agree with you too. I'm sure it certainly seems that way. I just don't put a whole bunch of thought into it. We're all getting asked this a lot. Like, who's the leader now? Who do we follow? Follow yourself.
Yeah, I always frame it this way. Have you ruled it out? Because if you've ruled it out, that's great. And if you haven't ruled it out, that's fine too. But it keeps people without saying who's the leader. Because I think it's silly to predict leaders at this point. I mean, a meteor could hit the United States by 2024.
Well, right. But you see a lot of people like, is Trump still the leader? I mean, that's the real question, right? Is Trump still the leader? And it's, well, I mean, not technically, no. I mean, who was the leader of the Democrats before Biden was president? I mean, was it Pelosi? Was it Schumer? It's not clear. It's not meant to be clear. I think there's a lot of pushing and pulling from either side of the party, and I think everybody needs to chill just a little bit and let it happen as it will, because and something will emerge. But yeah, I would say pretty much ruled it out.
Now, let me okay, that's great. I'll take a ruled out. I want to know another political question. We have governor races in Virginia and New Jersey, and we're going to have a recall in California. Dan Crenshaw draws a crowd. Will you campaign in those states? Will you come out and help, say, Rick Grinnell in California or Kevin Falconer or somebody, whoever you like out here?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't put much thought into it. But first of all, that's Rich. I also find it rich that he's doing his sanctimonious pearl clutching over a bunch of Texans who, by the way, can still wear masks. I mean, but by the reaction of the liberals on this one, you would think that Texas outlawed masks and is now arresting people who even wear a mask. Of course, that's not true. Most people will still be wearing them. But the truth is, if you're vaccinated or if you already had it, maybe you don't want to wear a mask, and you certainly don't need to. There's no scientific reason to wear one. I do remember the time when the guidance was, if you can't socially distance, wear a mask. Of course, that changed rather quickly. And but here's the thing. So they're very sanctimonious over that, but Biden has no problem letting illegal immigrants over the border in droves, many of which have COVID, and then they give them a bus ticket to wherever they want in the United States. So the double standard is pretty infuriating here.
So there's a lot in there, Congressman. First of all, the guy with low cognitive capacity, that's pretty rich. That is going to make a couple of headlines, don't you think?
I don't know.
I guarantee you, low cognitive capacity.
It gets said so often. I'm not sure that it's a new hot take anymore.
Oh, it's a hot take from you, Congressman. That's going to be interesting. Prepare for incoming.
Let's call this Neanderthal.
I know.
What do you want?
Okay. The second thing is that letting illegals over the border and releasing them, that's absolutely true. And I don't know if Americans know that dozens of people detained at the border tested positive and were released.
Yeah. It's happening on a daily basis. Look, here's the real problem. The Democrats want open borders. I mean, they really do. This is no longer speculation. I don't think we need to read the tea leaves on their intent and motivation on the border right now. They want more illegal immigrants coming in because every action they take produces that outcome. They ripped up the agreements we have with Mexico and with the Northern Triangle countries. These agreements were saving us. They've reversed the process that Trump's DHS meticulously created to prevent catch and release, and to get these asylum hearings done right away. And they reverted back to the old ways of just releasing everybody and saying, show up. It'd be nice if you showed up to your court hearing, your second one or your third one. This, in all practical reality, produces indefinite stays inside the United States, an entire new generation of illegal immigrants that are here now. This is a completely unsustainable model. Everybody knows it. We've even got Texas Democrats going on Fox News and saying, look, you have to stop this. You have to reverse it. It's harming the communities down here.
Now, I got to ask you, Congressman, my friend Brian Ferguson, who I think you know, told me about hot washes that the SEALs would do about every operation they ran. If you did a hot wash on the COVID vaccine rollout, what do you think would show up first as something you would do differently?
Sure. I mean, I'm not close enough to it to really make that assessment. It does seem, though, like every prediction the Trump administration made came true. Whatever prediction, whatever plan they said was in place, we appear to be following it almost exactly. Now, the Biden administration keeps saying they had nothing and keeps saying they improved upon it. They never say what they did to improve upon it. You notice that? Probably because they did nothing. And they hate to admit that they were basically just handed a plan that was decent enough. Look, any plan has to be managed as it goes on a day-by-day basis. So I'm sure give them credit for managing the plan that was given to them and the vaccines that were high-performing and handed to them right away as soon as they took office.
107 million doses have been delivered and 80 million have been administered in the United States. Team Biden could not have come up with that. That simply cannot be possible.
No, I mean, and they were also lying on their first day of office, saying, there was only 500,000 doses. We need to get it to 1 million. But the day Biden took office, 1 million doses were being given out. So
what does the lockdown bill do? What does the anti-lockdown bill do that you introduced?
Well, it's two things. One, requires states to simply have a reopening plan if they're going to get bailout money for their state and local governments. Okay, so let's be clear. This is only money to the state and local governments that it's tied to. It's not tied to healthcare money. It's not tied to PPP money, any of that. The second thing that it does is prevents the president from unilaterally doing a national lockdown. It would have been easy to write a bill that just says, hey, it's illegal to have lockdowns. But there's constitutional issues with that. So we actually thought through the constitutionality of this. It's actually pretty reasonable. Look, will Democrats even look at it? No, of course not. They scoff at it. They're in love with lockdowns. They think lockdowns are their savior. The premise behind this bill too is lockdowns don't work. Look, if there was some good rationale for this, if they were truly saving lives and stopping the spread, you can at least have a decent debate. You know, I still like to err on the side of personal choice and liberty over safety. I mean, of course, I can keep you very safe if I put you in a jail cell and never let you leave. I will make sure you are safe. But the reality is, even that's not a good argument because they don't work. And study after study has shown this. One of the more recent ones, pretty large study from Stanford, shows there's no additional benefit to stay-at-home orders or closing businesses. There just isn't.
I will be interested to see who co-signs and whether or not you'll get any Democrats. You might. Otherwise, they're going to lose their seats. Congressman Dan Crenshaw from Texas, always a pleasure, Congressman. Keep coming back. Whether or not your hot take is old, it certainly is news, and I appreciate your making it on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned, America.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Peter, is there a crisis on the border?
No, there isn't a crisis. There are 5 crises. There's a humanitarian crisis, public health crisis, economic crisis, national security crisis, and a law enforcement crisis. And when I say an economic crisis, what by that I mean we're having an influx of illegal immigrants that's going to harm the job prospects of millions of people who are currently unemployed because of the pandemic in addition to other things, and they're going to be competing with those folks. As far as national security is concerned, whenever you don't enforce the border, you don't know who's coming across, and ICE has said, and Department of Homeland Security has said a number of times that they've found all manner of folk coming across the border, Iranians, Chinese, and others, and we don't have a handle on that right now. It's a law enforcement crisis because all the data shows that with respect to serious crimes, murders, rapes, robberies, illegal aliens generally have higher crime rates than do Native Americans. As far as public health is concerned, it's self-evident. We have to have proof that we are COVID-free when we enter the United States, okay, lawfully, on a plane or through the traditional entry process. But thousands of illegal immigrants are coming across. We don't even know who's coming across, but we're waving them across without any COVID tests. They could be transmitting COVID or other diseases. We don't have a handle on that. They have pretty much declared that they can come across. There's an amnesty. They'll get free health care. This entices a lot of people to make an arduous journey, be exploited by the cartels, by coyotes. This is reprehensible what's happening. There's one objective here. We all know what the objective is. The principal immediate objective is turn Texas blue.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He's Andrew Cuomo. He's like a mafia don. He doesn't go out of anywhere unless it's in a box. Tell us, what's the truth, Joe Piscopo?
You know, Seb, he is. He's the Terminator of politics. And he really is. He'll be back. I'll be back. You know, and then I love everybody's making the mafia references because he's Italian. I don't get offended by it, but he's like the Salazzo character. Remember?
Yes, Virgil Salazzo.
I don't like violence, Michael. It's bad for business, you know. I mean, and then or how about this line? You want to see Governor Cuomo say that the bad news for me and bad news for you. You know, it's like a character. However, let me put this caveat out there, if I may, my friend. When I knew Andrew 30 years ago, 20 years ago, he was always nice. He was always cordial. He was always a gentleman. That's the Andrew Cuomo I know.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I've been following closely for years because AndrewandTodd.com is a great sponsor of the show. I've been following interest rates for years because they finance home purchases or they refinance houses that you have. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. You can call Andrew and Todd at 888-888-1172. And the rates that they can give you depend upon the 10-year Treasury. Now, about a year ago, before the virus hit, the 10-year Treasury was up around 2.5 to 3, which meant your interest on your home loan, 30-year fixed, conforming, would be anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5. Then COVID hit, stock market crashed, and the 10-year Treasury plummeted, I think at one point, 0.45, maybe 0.52. And interest rates, there were no interest rates. You couldn't get a loan. Then the market stabilized for a good 6 months. The greatest window in history opened. And the interest rates were in the middle twos, even the high ones, and always at 3. Now the 10-year Treasury has crept up to 1.47. That probably means interest rates, unless you have terrific credit, are going to be in the low 3s or the high 2s. But here's the deal. It's still historically low rates. And you need to call Andrew and Todd today at 888-888-1172. Or go to andrewandtodd.com because the 10-year Treasury is now up to 1.47. 1.47. That means it is time now to get your interest rate before it goes higher and to check. Just ask them to check what to do about your loan. Now, they sponsor the market report from yesterday. Dow was down 121. NASDAQ was up 361 points. My big stock, the only stock I follow closely, Amazon, dropped, I don't know, down to $3,000 a share. I think it's a $5,000 stock, so I'm not selling. I never sell Amazon. But I want you to know, 888-888-1172. I had to sell some Amazon yesterday because I got a diversification letter, so I diversified into Palantir and Penn. Penn owns Barstool Sports. That's why I did that. And I know Barstool Sports. And so they were big losers yesterday, all three of those. Amazon, Penn, and Palantir, and I don't care. I don't sell stocks much, but I have now 3 stocks. But I do follow interest rates, and I know that now is the time to refinance your house. AndrewandTodd.com. I also know now is the time to be as generous as you have ever been. I don't like left-hand, right-hand stuff. I know what the gospel says about telling people when you give the money, but if it can inspire you, I tell you. The Touching Mrs. Hewitt and I dug very deep for Food for the Poor this year, first day of the campaign. Why? Because Honduras is a mess and it's a wreck. Now, some people are saying, give to it because it'll stop people flooding north. That's not why I give to it. I give to it because people are starving to death in Honduras. And I mean, when I say starving to death, I mean starving to death. Here is Linda in Honduras talking about the situation.
We could never, ever do it without Food for the Poor and their donors. And we pray for you every day. And I know that person up in the mountain that got that 5 pounds of rice or 5 pounds of beans, they'll be praying. They'll be praying and blessing you for the rest of their lives.
It is rice and beans. That's all it is. And Food for the Poor does rice and beans better than anyone else. And guess what? That keeps people alive. That's what they sent to Haiti 3 years ago and kept thousands of people alive after a tropical storm. They've sent it to Nicaragua in the past after earthquakes and volcanoes. This year, They're focused on Honduras because the virus is there. It's destroyed food delivery programs. It's destroyed the tourism economy. It's destroyed a lot. So what you do is go over to HughHewitt.com. And if you click on that, HughHewitt.com, I'm doing it myself right now in real time to see it load. And right next to my smiling face, right above my smiling face, you're going to see Give Food, Give Hope, Give Life. Now, I myself, if I were in charge of this, would have put food for the poor. But nobody asked me. So go to the top. It says Give Food, Give Hope, Give Life. You're saying, well, where's the Food for the Poor banner? It's the Give Food, Give Hope, Give Life banner. And then if you want to call right now, you can call 855-359-HOPE. 855-359-HOPE. They didn't count on Steelers fans when they put that banner up. Go now. Give food, give hope, give life, give to Food for the Poor at HughHewitt.com.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He's Andrew Cuomo. He's like a mafia don. He doesn't go out of anywhere unless it's in a box. Tell us, what's the truth, Joe Piscopo?
You know, Seb, he is. He's the Terminator of politics. And he really is. He'll be back. I'll be back. I mean, you know, and then I love everybody's making the mafia references because he's Italian. I don't get offended by it, but he's like the Salazzo character. Remember?
Yes, Virgil Salazzo.
I don't like violence, Michael. It's bad for business, you know? I mean, and then or how about this line? You want to see Governor Cuomo say that the bad news for me and bad news for you. You know, it's like a character. However, let me put this caveat out there, if I may, my friend. When I knew Andrew 20 years ago, he was always nice. He was always cordial. He was always a gentleman. That's the Andrew Cuomo I know. I don't know who this guy is now, you know? And I'm
really?
Michael Goodwin. Yeah, honestly. And
so you say he's changed?
I don't look. I talked to Kieran Lawler, who's up in Albany, one of the assemblymen, and Kieran said, "Joe, why are you saying nice things about Andrew Cuomo?" I said, "I'm just saying when I met him, he was nice." Then I talked to Michael Goodwin this morning, that we know and love from the New York Post, and Michael says he has changed in office. I do know this about him. First of all, he was always nice to me, and I always open the mic up to join me on the air. But I'm not Seb Gorka. I like to think I'm a good radio guy, but I'm not. He said to me, he goes, "Joe, I love you, but you know Dr. Gorka." He told me that. No, not really, but the thing is, what he did was with the women was one thing, and he apologized, and we have to accept that. I think easy for me to say, but it was nice that he did that. Not, you know what this means? The Italians go like this, you and the Italians go like this. They not one question from any reporter about the nursing home deaths. Right. Did you notice that?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Speaking of studies, one of them was led by the black Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who made the argument that unskilled illegal aliens pose competition to unskilled black and brown workers. And Coretta Scott King once wrote a letter, I believe it was you who brought my attention to that. I wrote a letter to Congress urging them not to relax sanctions against employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens because of the threat that they pose to black and brown workers. That was Coretta Scott King writing that letter.
And there are a number of others, Barbara Jordan and others, of course, but this was at a time when many of our black leaders actually had true, adult, sane concerns about the prospects of African Americans. These days, I don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone, but if you take a look at our so-called black leaders, they're all in uniform lockstep with the principal interests of the Democratic Party, as opposed to the average American and average black American. We have had hearing after hearing at the Civil Rights Commission. There have been numerous hearings before Congress on this. The evidence is plain. Yes, you're going to get contrary arguments from people. I would urge your listeners, take a look at the data. One of the pieces of evidence before the Civil Rights Commission is that 40% of the a full 18-point decline in labor rates among blacks prior to the Trump administration came from competition from illegal immigrants. That's astonishing. That was turned around under Trump. We actually had a complete reversal. We had the lowest unemployment rates among blacks in history, and especially among young blacks. And labor participation rates for young blacks was going through the roof. And now, just because Trump implemented this, we're reversing this, and we're damaging the prospects in a time when we can't afford it in the midst of a pandemic.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Congressman Mike Gallagher. Congressman Gallagher is a member of the Nixon Seminar, which met for the first time on Tuesday night. And he asked the fourth question. It was first Mike Pompeo of Dr. Kissinger, then Robert O'Brien of Dr. Kissinger, and I asked a question of Dr. Kissinger, and then Mike Gallagher asked the fourth question. And I was amazed by two things. First of all, Congressman Gallagher did not call for the field goal team to come on, so that was a big start. That was a step up. And then secondly, he asked Henry Kissinger about artificial intelligence, and I had a heart attack. So, Congressman Gallagher, first of all, why did you not call? You're a Green Bay guy. Why didn't you call in the field goal team? Fourth down.
You know, I'm a little slow, Hugh, but I'm faster than Chad Henne, which is more than I can say for the Browns defense, because you got to be pretty slow to be slower than Chad Henne. Old man Henne, scrambling for 13 yards, sealing the game against the Browns. But, you know, once I get it together. Well, you know, it's interesting about Dr. Kissinger. I mean, there's so many things that he's written about. But in recent years, he's written a lot about artificial intelligence, not from a technical expert perspective, but from a geopolitical and strategist perspective, and really this earnest desire to grapple with what he senses is a game-changing bit of technology, one that the Russians, the Chinese, and American thinkers have said is going to be key to geopolitical competition in the future. And I'm always interested in how people like that think about technology and its role in geopolitical competition.
I'm gonna come back to the answer itself, but obviously you had done some reading that Kissinger, because I had no idea that Dr. Kissinger had written about this. But when he answered it, he's been meeting with Eric Schmidt and the provost of MIT every Sunday for 4 years. I kind of knew we were on safe terrain. Did you know that?
I knew that he was close with Eric Schmidt, who is heading the AI Commission, and the AI Commission just released a report recently. I actually didn't know they were meeting on a regular basis, but one of the things he's been grappling with too intellectually is the ethical uses of AI. And this is something that we need to think about as American policymakers, as well as American business leaders. Do we want American capital going to fund companies in China that could produce AI-enabled technology that might, for example, be used to surveil and imprison Uyghur Muslims, to euthanize Uyghur Muslims, to participate in the genocide. This is a real thorny set of issues that we need to grapple with right now. And I sense in Dr. Kissinger an honest desire to tackle those issues head on.
Did you, were you as impressed as I was about Dr. Kissinger's capacity at age 97 for give and take?
As someone who turned 37 yesterday, I have less capacity than he does at that advanced age. It is remarkable, and the clarity with which he remembers the events of the Nixon administration. I initially wanted to ask him about his relationship with a great Wisconsinite who passed away a couple years ago, Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird. And in Kissinger's memoirs, he talks about Laird as the only person who was able to routinely best him in bureaucratic battles, because Laird was such a wily political operator and a shrewd operator. And the way in which he describes Laird is absolutely fascinating. And why I'm interested in that is I think they faced a similar set of challenges that we do today. The challenge then was, how do we withdraw with honor from Vietnam? How do we effectuate Vietnamization while reducing American presence in order to refocus on a great power adversary? In that case, it was the Soviet Union. And so too today, we're wrestling with, how do we reduce our force presence in one theater, the Middle East, in order to refocus on a great power adversary, China. And we now have the third administration that is committed on paper to rebalancing the Pacific, but the previous two administrations did not actually rebalance our military forces to the Pacific. So it'll be very interesting if Biden is able to succeed where his predecessors failed, and Kissinger is in an ideal position to advise us on how to do that successfully.
Now, he won't be involved every month on the Nixon Seminar. I'm curious, and I don't mind if millions of people hear you say, no, it's screwed up this way. How'd you like the format? I think it's got to move at a faster clip. I think more people have to jump in. And obviously, everyone had the shies. Gordon Gucci was my first partner in charge when I was at Baker & Butts. Used to yell at the young kids, you can't get the shies now, when we were all 22 and out of law school. You got to speak up. What was going on there? Were people just overwhelmed by Kissinger?
Well, I think I'm a very intimidating presence, Hugh, and when people are with me, they don't want to speak up. As for the pace, Hugh, it didn't surprise me that a Browns fan would be operating at such a slow pace. That pace that even Chad Henne could go faster than, but we can find ways to speed it up, and maybe
we go to the 5-minute offense.
20 minutes of cocktails prior to the actual discussion will get people over the shies in the future.
That will be good. Now I go back to AI. Kissinger reframed your question a little bit. He said, if you're asking me about the strategic impact, which meant, of course, great power competition, the bottom line was we cannot allow the PRC to get ahead of us or they'll forever be ahead of us. Wasn't that what he was saying?
Yes. There's sort of a first mover advantage to these types of technologies. And the CCP has an advantage in one respect when it comes to AI. And it's not just the amount of money they're throwing at the problem. It's the amount of data that they're vacuuming up from their population in a near total surveillance state. In many ways, we can look at what's happening in Xinjiang province as an experimental, test for what they want to export, not only through the rest of their country, but globally. And so this is a real challenge. Now, we have some very energetic and thoughtful people in the Pentagon working on this problem at something called the JAIC, the Joint AI Center, some really innovative Marine Corps thinkers working on this problem. But beyond just investing more resources in it and finding out a way for the public sector and the defense community in particular to better collaborate with the private sector, we really need to work with our allies to establish the rules of the road here. What are the parameters for the use of this technology? What does a non-proliferation regime look like for AI? I mean, this is the new Cold War, and we're grappling with questions like this, and we're going to be the ones, hopefully, in a position to define the rules and enforce the rules going forward.
I want to explain a little bit from my reading of The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Rubin, Rosoff, that what you just said, for the Steelers fans out there, I think we can both agree we got to break it down slowly. China has 1 billion people. The United States has 330 million people. Each one of those people produces data simply by having a device or sometimes by being near a device. They produce data. The more data you have, the more data you can crunch and use to predict via algorithms. So any large population country that imposes surveillance has a data advantage, and they produce more data every day. Every day they've got 1 billion people making data, and we've got 330 million people making data. Every day they have 300% advantage on us. That is significant, Mike Gallagher.
It's huge. And then you add on to that, Hugh, the fact that they send so many of their most talented programmers, coders, technological specialists, engineers to elite American universities. They get educated at our institutions, and then they go back to China, or they embed themselves in academia here, and that raises counterintelligence concerns and further allows them to export intellectual property. And so, I don't claim to be a technical expert on AI, but I can tell you there's, about 10 sort of decisive technologies right now that may determine the course of this competition over the long term. We are waking up in the national security community. I'm hoping that we're not waking up too slowly, but there's other things we need to invest in, right? I mean, the reason Taiwan, in some sense, is so valuable, not just as a legacy issue for the CCP or for Xi himself, is because of a company called TSMC, which makes chips. And so if Xi is able to effectuate the unification of Taiwan with the mainland, he can hold the rest of the world hostage because he can dominate chip production. So we need to think about, how do we onshore chip production in America? How do we work with Australia to cooperate on rare earth mineral production and refinement? I mean, this really is the challenge. How do we harness this Buy America energy in the wake of the pandemic, so we're not dependent on China for critical goods, into what I would call a Buy Allied or a Buy Free World strategy? So we're working with our closest partners, particularly our Five Eyes partners, to make sure that in the event of great power competition, the Chinese can't cut off the export of insulin or life-saving drugs so as to win a war before it starts.
So Dr. Kissinger also brought up quantum computing, which I put in a different category from artificial intelligence, another category that I don't really comprehend. Do you categorize that as different from AI, or do you put that in the same silo?
I put it sort of like in a similar bucket, but they're not the same thing. But admittedly, like you, I'm a novice when it comes to all of this, and so I try not to get outside of my expertise.
Okay,
but
last question.
It is remarkable that he, at his age, has dove into these topics and has a very thorough understanding of them.
All right, the tape is now available. We're not going to make many things available, but we wanted to make Dr. Kissinger's conversation available, even though the field goal unit trotted on. Last thing I want to ask you about, I'm not sure I'm right about this. The Biden administration, did they relax the sanction on the Confucius Institute requirements for disclosure and transparency?
They did. They absolutely did.
What are they thinking? Are they out of their minds?
It makes no sense at all. The fact is, we should be scrutinizing PLA-affiliated researchers at American universities. There's bipartisan support for that initiative. I intend to pursue a legislative path to overturning their executive order, which undoes the Trump administration's executive order. But this is the wrong direction. We now have all the evidence we need to know that American universities shouldn't be hosting Confucius Institutes, and they really need to do a better job of scrutinizing PLA-affiliated researchers in particular.
Can state governments mandate that state universities disclose and expel Confucius Institutes?
In my reading of the law, certainly in Wisconsin, is that they can. And then the other thing states need to do is take a look at all of their pension funds and ask whether they want those funds invested in Chinese military companies that are producing things that could either enslave Uyghur Muslims or build equipment that could be used to kill Americans in a future conflict. States have enormous power, particularly since their pension funds are a huge source of private equity that's used, on Wall Street right now. That's another area where states really need to look.
When I was in college and you weren't even alive, they had the campaign to divest from South Africa. And it was effective, and it turned that regime around. But that doesn't exist for China and the Uyghurs yet, but it might. Congressman Mike Gallagher, good to see you twice in a week. And again, go back there. Next time we call on you, don't wave on the field goal team, please. Thank you, Congressman. Time for ReliefFactor.com. I got to send a lot of Relief Factor to Green Bay. Those people in Green Bay need ReliefFactor.com. They're still punching each other in the shoulder and saying, can you believe they didn't go for it on 4th down? And I'm not on in Green Bay except early in the morning. And so people drive off the road when they hear me bring that up. And they say to me, why would you bring that up? I went to dinner with John Yeager, my old law partner, the other night. And he's a Packers fan because his dad, Louis, grew up in Green Bay. And he's been back to Lambeau with the kids. And I brought it up at dinner. Why did they not go for it on fourth? And Yeager said, why would you bring that up? Started to cry. It was a very sad thing. And so relieffactor.com for the Packers fans. I know you're still traumatized by that. I know you've still got the winter blues. Relieffactor.com. It cannot change the past, but it can get you exercising in, get you outdoors, get Aaron Rodgers' arm back into shape. I think he could have scored. That's why he's Aaron Rodgers. Relieffactor.com. $19.95 is the starter pack. Don't leave home without it. Put a bag in your car. I tell you about it in the first hour. I remind you twice. If you're a new affiliate, relieffactor.com is a great sponsor. You'll hear about it 3 times a day, every day, because I want you to join the tens of thousands of people who take it every day. Senator Jim Talon is next, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Born to Lead and Salem Now.
Trending now on America First.
Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Well, my question is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about systemic racism, and I mentioned one of your nuggets that actually more white people, unarmed white people are killed than black people. And you say, of course they are, because there's more white people in this country than black people. So what's the answer to that? I didn't know how to come back.
Real simple. White people are what percentage of the population? Around 61%. What percentage of the homicides are committed by white people? 50%. Meaning they commit, as a percentage of their population, less murders than blacks do at 13%. We commit almost half of the homicides at 13%. So at 13%, we're far more likely to be an offender and a victim of a homicide. A young black man is anywhere from 7 to 10 times more likely, Larry, to be the victim of a homicide, almost always at the hand
Welcome back, America. The big news story of the day on the Hugh Hewitt Show is $1.9 trillion is rapidly getting smaller, but it's still double or triple the size of what it should be. Senator Jim Talent, formerly of Missouri, joins me to talk about the vote-a-rama that's coming up in the Senate today and tomorrow in an effort by Republicans to stop the bill and to shrink it. What do you think, Senator? Are they going to be successful?
Oh, I think it'll get smaller by the time it passes the entire Congress, yes. But, it just strikes me, this is 2009 all over again. And they passed a big stimulus bill on a partisan vote. It was stuffed full of a bunch of embarrassing things. Their own base wasn't satisfied because it was all they did in 2009, other than Dodd-Frank, which Chris Dodd was smart enough to do with some Republican support. And by the time the 2012 presidential campaign came around, Obama's people wouldn't even mention the word stimulus. You remember the 2012 campaign? Did he run on the stimulus?
Because it would have brought up the word Solyndra.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen again.
Exactly. And they had a chance, and this is why I'm wondering about the president, because these Republicans approached him, Portman and the others, and they wanted to make some kind of he had a chance to get a nice bipartisan win. And they just rejected it, which is really not like him. I don't know what's going on, but they jammed this through the House on a party line vote, and it's just and their base is not going to be satisfied at the end of the year. In fact, I don't think they particularly care that much about this when this is all they've done.
At the and they only get one reconciliation vote. This election bill that's coming through the House, it doesn't have a prayer. The all the stuff that's coming through the House, the Equality Act doesn't have a prayer in the Senate. So it's really, you get one bill a year. You get a reconciliation bill. The next one they're going to raise taxes, right? Because Bernie Sanders is the chairman of the Budget Committee. Can those tax hikes be effective in 2021, Jim Talent, or do they have to be effective in 2022?
You mean retroactively? Yeah, you can do it retroactively. It's not a lot of fun politically. It's tax increases and an enormous spending bill, which will be remembered for the inevitable pieces of it that are abusive, and the fact that it's supposed to be a stimulus bill and much of it won't even be spent, for years.
No, it's a recipe for redistricting nightmares. They're all going to take a lot of votes in vote-a-rama, and eventually it's going to be a Solyndra-like bill. And the Republicans, I know it's painful now to see this money being spent, and it's bad fiscal politics, and inflation is coming back. But politically, it's a bonanza.
And here's another thing that works in this sort of thing. My first term in the House, the phrase BTU'd came into the political lexicon. I'll try and do this quickly because I know we're on a short time frame here. So the House passed a tax bill that included a BTU tax, which basically is a tax on energy. It was extremely unpopular. They made the Democratic members vote for it, and it never had a chance of passing in the Senate because David Oren was a senator from Oklahoma. And he said, we're not going to pass this, right? So here the House members had to vote for something that was politically very unpopular and that never had a chance in the Senate. And the phrase, well, we got BTU, entered the political lexicon. And we're seeing this happen again. It happened in 2009 with the cap and trade bill. And I just look at this and go, I don't understand it. It's bad substantively, but I don't understand the politics of it.
I got a quick question for you, Senator Talent. Congressman Crenshaw was on earlier this hour, and he's mad because the president called Texans Neanderthals yesterday, and he said that's rich coming from someone with diminished cognitive capacity. And I paused and I said, that's a headline, Congressman. And he said, no, everyone says it. Are you surprised at the president's pace?
At his what, I'm sorry?
At his pace. He's nowhere to be seen most days.
I'm worried. And I don't joke around about that. I don't make politics about this. I'm concerned when I watch because it's not the Joe Biden that I saw and was familiar with. Not that I was ever close to Senator or President Biden. Okay, I'm not trying to pretend I was a bosom buddy of his, but I am a little concerned about it. And why would he call Texans that? Why would you ever say that about anybody who are constituents of you?
It's worse than a basket of deplorables. It's worse.
Oh, I think so. Especially in context, I always thought that Clinton got a little bit of a bad rap on that. I mean, it was an incautious way of phrasing it, but yeah.
Everyone who doesn't wear a mask, because by extension, that's why he's criticizing Texans for being Neanderthals. And I'm a mask wearer, and I've had half the vaccine, but I still wear masks because there's no downside to it. There's no downside to it. But to call other people Neanderthals is simply flunking a basic task of civility.
Well, it is, and these are people, who are in a position to vote for or against yourself and people who you want to win. So why would you do that? I mean, I never understood why politicians would insult voters. I just don't think, it's like walking into your boss and calling him a name. I mean, what's to be gained by that, right?
Only Dwayne does that and gets away with it. That happens pretty much every day on the Hugh Hewitt show, but that's the only place it happens. Dwayne does insult the host. But Senator Talent, always a pleasure. Follow him on Twitter at Jim Talent. Follow me to the next hour. Congressman Stauber, who I think is going to be the Gopher State's new governor when we return.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden announcing yesterday, here's what he said about enough vaccines for every adult in America in a matter of weeks.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
Now, while that's good news, he can't help himself in taking pot shots at the previous administration that has delivered the vaccines to the world. They laughed. They mocked Trump when he set a target date of having a vaccine at the end of 2020. Well, guess what? We got the vaccine by the end of 2020. You know why? Because of President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Remember Kamala Harris, who said she might not even take the vaccine that was recommended by the Trump administration? Well, now they've done a 180-degree pivot. Now, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board points out, the Biden-Harris administration has changed to full-throated encouragement.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another $1 trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
You see, the story of the nursing homes is actually a very complicated story. The nursing home story is one that we warned about on this program, and the great one Mark Levin warned about back in March. I remember listening to the Mark Levin radio program, and a woman called into the Great One's radio show and said, Mark, I work for a nursing home association, and Andrew Cuomo is now ordering Chinese coronavirus infected patients to be put into nursing homes. And at the time Andrew Cuomo was doing his multi-hour, slow, daily briefings. Mark Levin asked the caller, this can't possibly be true, and Janice Dean, who works for Fox News, claims that both of her parents were killed as a result of this policy. Let's also get the tape of Janice Dean. So this was a scandal that we knew was occurring. Now, putting Chinese coronavirus infected patients into nursing homes is bad enough. But Andrew Cuomo decided to do something worse than that. He doubled down on the policy, lied about it ever happening, and then covered it up. You see, early on in the virus, it's understandable that mistakes are going to be made. Some Republican governors made some mistakes. And you course correct. You say, we shouldn't have done that. And you adjust. That's what being a leader is all about. So do I think that Andrew Cuomo was a fool to sign off on this policy? Absolutely.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
A family was thrown off the plane by Frontier. The family claims it was because they wanted an 18-month-old masked. The Frontier claims it's because after multiple requests, the family would not wear masks. This is the New York Times, New York Post, and many other places. Every other passenger that I read about, it doesn't mean every other passenger, but every other passenger that I read about said that they were masked the entire time. They were part of a Hasidic Jewish group, and all of them are seen wearing masks in the videos taken on the plane by people's smartphones. I think Frontier is an independent airline. And according to some, a reference was made to, we really got the Jews, or something like that, amongst the people there. Some of the crew actually clapped when they left. It's a troubling story if unless Frontier is telling the complete truth. Frontier looks ugly in this story.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Peter, is there a crisis on the border?
No, there isn't a crisis. There are 5 crises. There's a humanitarian crisis, public health crisis, economic crisis, national security crisis, and a law enforcement crisis. And when I say an economic crisis, what by that I mean we're having an influx of illegal immigrants that's going to harm the job prospects of millions of people who are currently unemployed because of the pandemic, in addition to other things, and they're going to be competing with those folks. As far as national security is concerned, whenever you don't enforce the border, you don't know who's coming across, and ICE has said, and Department of Homeland Security has said a number of times that they've found all manner of folk coming across the border, Iranians, Chinese, and others, and we don't have a handle on that right now. It's a law enforcement crisis because all the data shows that with respect to serious crimes, murders, rapes, robberies, illegal aliens generally have higher crime rates than do Native Americans. As far as public health is concerned, it's self-evident. We have to have proof that we are COVID-free when we enter the United States, lawfully, on a plane or through the traditional entry process. But thousands of illegal immigrants are coming across. We don't even know who's coming across, but we're waving them across without any COVID tests. They could be transmitting COVID or other diseases.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, morning glory to you all out there, wherever you are, across these great 50 states in Canada and across Europe. If you're listening on YouTube or on Facebook, new guest, Representative Pete Stauber of Minnesota's 8th Congressional District is my guest. Good morning, Congressman. Great to have you.
Good morning, Hugh. It's great to be with you and your listeners this morning.
Now, I've got a lot of friends in Minnesota. I used to go to the state fair every year until I got banned by AM 1280 The Patriot. I ate all the French fries at the French fry booth, and I love the Minnesota State Fair. But I got a lot of sources there. The Powerline guys, the Northern Alliance, Chad the Elder. One of them tells me you're the next governor of Minnesota. What do you say about that?
Well, Hugh, I really am humbled, and it's an honor to be asked, to get on the Republican ticket for governor from all sides of the state. But, right now, Hugh, we're concentrating on the 8th District in Minnesota. We just got reelected with 20 points and 75,000 votes, and there's so much opportunity to, push agenda items that really support the economy and benefit our farmers and miners and ranchers and small businessmen and women in the 8th District with the committees that I'm on. So I'm really, at this moment, I'm really focused on the 8th District of our great state of Minnesota.
But your great state is reeling, and in fact, I read a headline today that the Floyd murder case is likely to result in more civil unrest. What do you think?
Well, I certainly hope not. We had, as you know, last Memorial Day was a tragic incident, and Minneapolis burned for 3 days. I've been down in Minneapolis since. It's really a sad sight to see, Hugh. The beautiful city of Minneapolis burnt down $3 billion worth of, or $30 million rather, dollars worth of damage. We had a governor that made some really, really bad decisions, and the mayor of Minneapolis as well. So we're reeling from that, and I really hope that beautiful city, we can bring that back up to prosperity and allow people to feel safe in our state, in our downtown Minneapolis rather. And I think that it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some trust, and we have to support the Minneapolis police officers. I am a former police officer myself, Hugh, as you know, and I support the men and women in blue, and I hope we get to talk about my Justice Act that Senator Scott and I wrote together.
We're about to, but I want to say Derek Chauvin is charged, and I have come to the conclusion he murdered him. I couldn't be on the jury because I've made a conclusion just like I did about O.J. Simpson. However, the idea that the courthouse is turned into a fortress and that they're planning on riots regardless of what the verdict is, I just think that this is the most irresponsible thing. And Minnesota or Minneapolis is not really prepared because they've been holding back their police. They've been defunding their cops. The morale is down. You must know that as an officer alum, Congressman Stauber.
Well, absolutely. When the Minneapolis City Council voted to remove monies and defund the police, yet several of them required taxpayer money for private security. It just doesn't make sense. And, the men and women in law enforcement, they do a tremendous job. They keep our community safe, and I think that we have to give them the support, the training that they need so they can succeed in any call for service that they are asked to go on.
So tell us about the Justice Act. Tim Scott's been working on this for a long time. I know you've got a great partner with him, but how's it going to fare in the House?
Well, I think that, first off, the Justice Act is a pragmatic piece of legislation, common sense that can get into law. I have all the faith and confidence. If it's voted on the House floor, it'll get passed. If it's voted on the Senate floor, it's going to pass. And President Biden will sign it into law. You know, the Justice Act really came about. Senator Scott and I talked about it. He talked about his years growing up as a black man in South Carolina, and my part was from a police officer in northern Minnesota. And so we brought our backgrounds together. We talked about what we can do to hold bad cops accountable, and then invest in good policing. And Hugh, one of the really interesting things is the Justice Act is it's supported by many law enforcement communities and associations. We just voted on the Justice in Policing Act, the George Floyd Act that the Democrats put forward, and it was partisan. It was purely partisan. Not one police organization supported it, and this is the concern I have with Congress. There's not a lot of bipartisan right now, and I know that Justice Act, if you read it, it brings back community policing, and those of us who have done community policing and those departments across the nation, it's you don't police your community, you police with your community. You build relations, build trust with the communities that you serve. You records retention, de-escalation techniques. It's all about best practices, and this gives every police department in the nation, Hugh, the opportunity to put forth best practices with financial investment and assistance from the federal government when you do so. We want good police officers serving our nation, and this Justice Act does just that.
Now, Congressman, we are on right now on WDSM in Duluth as well. I believe Duluth is in your district. Am I right?
It is. I was born and raised in Duluth, and WDSM is a great station. It's listened to by a lot of folks, and I know many of them are listening to us right now. So I want to give a shout out to my friends in northern Minnesota.
Well, this is the reason I bring this up. If and when you become governor, Tim Pawlenty named me commissioner of hockey in Minnesota 20 years ago, and I just want your assurance that there'll be no change in my even Mark Dayton left me alone as commissioner of hockey. Will that continue if you become governor?
I tell you what, I'm the congressional liaison to the National Hockey League as it sits because of my professional hockey experience. But I tell you what, if that ever becomes a reality, I certainly will keep you in the running. How's that, Hugh?
Okay, well, I just thought, if Mark Dayton didn't remove me, I can't imagine you would. You're the liaison to the NHL. That's kind of cool. What's that involve, Congressman?
So what we did is I worked with Commissioner Bettman and all the owners through talks on how we can best get the game back playing, and that was for the Stanley Cup Finals last year. And it was really, giving them advice, kind of what we in Congress were thinking, because we wanted the National Hockey League to have their Stanley Cup last year, and they did it, and they did it with extreme success. It was a lot of work by a lot of people, but I'm passionate about the game of hockey. I was fortunate many years ago to play with the Detroit Red Wings organization, and I love the game. Northern Minnesota, I mean, that's why we're called the state of hockey, right?
Well, that's why I'm the commissioner. I do everything I can to nurture the game there. But I got to ask you as well, are you a Vikings fan?
I'm all about Minnesota. I love the Twins, the Vikings, the Wild, the Timberwolves. We have a great sports field in our state, and it's I attend as many games as I can.
I have two thank yous, Congressman. One, Kevin Stefanski, who was the Vikings offensive coordinator, is now the head coach and the coach of the year in the NFL in the Cleveland Browns. And I'm a season ticket holder and have been since '99. And Stefanski's a genius. Number two, Eddie Rosario used to kill the Tribe when he was a Twin. So he went out and we got him during free agency. So we're depleting Minnesota of its sports resources to build up Cleveland, and that is a good thing.
Well, I'm not so sure it's a good thing. We're going to build up the professional teams in Minnesota.
Now, last question, Congressman. Kevin McCarthy's a pal. He is pretty optimistic that after redistricting, the House is going to go Republican. Do you share that optimism, and how does redistricting look in Minnesota?
First off, I do share the optimism. I mean, Hugh, look at what Nancy Pelosi and leading Democrats are putting on the House floor. Believe it or not, just yesterday I voted on a bill to allow 16-year-olds to vote and put voting machines in prisons. I mean, this is the lack of leadership that the speaker is putting forward to our nation. We have opportunities to put great bipartisan legislation that moves the country forward, and I'm very optimistic that we can take back the House with what Pelosi's, the H.R. 1, for example, the federal takeover of elections. Somebody would donate $200 to an election hue, and they get $1,200 from the government. Where does that thinking even come from? And so, and the COVID-19 package, zero input from Republicans. It's her way or the highway, and it's devastating to America. And I'm fighting for our great state of Minnesota and those that live in the 8th District. And I'm not backing off from these partisan packages and fighting for what we believe in as conservative Republicans.
Well, Pete Stauber, keep coming back, Congressman. People can follow Congressman Stauber at Rep. Pete Stauber. And remember that Commissioner of Hockey deal when we get to the governor's race, if that happens. I'm calling you governor already, Congressman. Great to have you on. Thank you, Duluth, for listening. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Does that make you smile? That is one of my favorites from the 70s, Don McLean. And if you're not 50 years or older, you won't even remember this. He was a phenom, of course, for American Pie, but he had a few other hits. Vincent and this. And I get you smiling, and then I hit you up for some money. Food for the Poor is saving tens of thousands of lives in Honduras right now. They got a breakdown of the economy because of COVID. I got the numbers on COVID. The official numbers on COVID show, if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Facebook or Instagram, the spike is incredible. That's actually been there for a long time. Testing is just catching up with how rampant COVID is in Honduras. And the economy shuttered and tourism is down. And as a result, when the economy shuts down, even when you've got a subsistence economy, they can't subsist. They can't grow. They can't deliver. Gas goes through the roof. Stuff happens. So Food for the Poor always targets their aid to the part of Central America and the Caribbean that is most desperate. Now, I help them out every year, and they sponsor an appeal every year. And every year, I give them some money, but Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I sat down and said, this is the year we're going as big as we ever have. And so Food for the Poor has got a banner over at HughHewitt.com. It says, give food, give hope, give life. It's up there at the top. Thousands of you have already contributed. We've had $5 contributions, and we've had 5-figure contributions. And I don't really care where you are, what you can do, if you do something commiserate with your means. When you do it for the least of me, you do it for me. And if you heard the response of the people who get rice and beans, Linda is in Honduras. She comments on it. Do we have the Linda tape? Dwayne?
Never, ever do it without Food for the Poor and their donors. And we pray for you every day. And I know that person up in the mountain that got that 5 pounds of rice or 5 pounds of beans, they'll be praying. They'll be praying and blessing you for the rest of their lives.
So I'm gonna do a gimmick. $1,000 Thursday. Can you come up with $1,000? I know some of you can only do, and I love if you can do 111. That will feed 3 starving kids for 6 months. $1,000 will feed 30 kids. And this is not romantic stuff. This is rice and beans, big container ships of rice and beans, pallets of rice and beans, the people to deliver the rice and beans, the local partners, they've been doing it. They know how to do it. They will get it done. It's Food for the Poor. The reason I agree to partner with them and let them sponsor is because I know the organization. And Angel Alomo has been their executive director for years. I just know them. Tom Tradup has been everywhere with them. Phil Boyce has been everywhere with them. The Salem team goes everywhere with them. The people that can travel, we know them. We hope you trust us. Food for the Poor at HughHewitt.com. Or you can call, if you're old-fashioned, you can call 855-359-HOPE. 855-359-HOPE. I prefer if you go to the Give Food, Give Life banner. Also, market check. Yesterday, bad day again. Inflation fears continue to rattle global stocks. Stocks are down by 0.68% in England, 0.33%. In Germany, they're down by 2 points in Japan, 2 points in Hong Kong. I don't know what the market's going to do today. It's way too early. 4 o'clock comes way after my show. And it's no use looking at early markets because things change during the day. But yesterday, the Dow was down 121, the NASDAQ down 361 because inflation scares the heck out of technology, rotation occurs. And the 10-year Treasury went up to 1.47. So if you're going to buy or refinance a house, do it now. Go to andrewandtodd.com. andrewandtodd.com. 888-888-1172. andrewandtodd.com. They're the best mortgage lenders in the business. Sierra Pacific Mortgage is their parent, but andrewandtodd.com is where you want to go answer a couple of questions. They'll come right back at you. 888-888-1172. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. Orange County Future Supervisor John Moorlach joins me.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Well, my question is, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about systemic racism, and I mentioned one of your nuggets that actually more white people, unarmed white people, are killed than black people. And you say, of course they are, because there's more white people in this country than black people. So what's the answer to that? I didn't know how to come back on that.
Real simple. White people are what percentage of the population? Around 61%. What percentage of the homicides are committed by white people? 50%, meaning they commit, as a percentage of their population, less murders than blacks do at 13%. We commit almost half of the homicides at 13%. So at 13%, we're far more likely to be an offender and a victim of a homicide. A young black man is anywhere from 7 to 10 times more likely, Larry, to be the victim of a homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black man. The leading cause of death for young white men, Larry, is accidents, like car accidents or pool drownings. The leading cause of death, preventable or non-preventable for young black men, homicide, almost always at the hands of another black man. That is why the police are there. It is true that the police are 2.5 times more likely to kill a black suspect. It's also true, as I said, that a young black suspect is 7 or 8 times more likely to be a victim of a homicide. That's why the cops are there. You look at a city, Larry, like St. Louis. St. Louis is about 45% black. About 300 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Baltimore, 65% black. About 400 homicides last year, 90% of them black on black. Chicago, a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides black on black. Tell your friend that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden announcing yesterday, here's what he said about enough vaccines for every adult in America in a matter of weeks.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
Now, while that's good news, he can't help himself in taking pot shots at the previous administration that has delivered the vaccines to the world. They laughed. They mocked Trump when he set a target date of having a vaccine at the end of 2020. Well, guess what? We got the vaccine by the end of 2020. You know why? Because of President Trump's Operation Warp Speed. Remember Kamala Harris, who said she might not even take the vaccine that was recommended by the Trump administration? Well, now they've done a 180-degree pivot. Now, as the Wall Street Journal editorial board points out, the Biden-Harris administration has changed to full-throated encouragement.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Jerry Boyer of Town Hall Finance for townhall.com. Investors, the business press, and just ordinary citizens concerned about their 401k accounts are beginning to get worried about inflation. For most of my career, I've been talking conservative leaders down from dire predictions of imminent inflation. Now I think that inflation is a very real short and midterm risk. Last year, the Trump administration borrowed $3.3 trillion, yes, with a T, to fund COVID relief and various stimuli. At the end of the year, almost another trillion was agreed to, and now the new president is proposing an additional almost $2 trillion. So far, almost all of this new spending has been financed out of the central bank's creation of new monetary base. In other words, we printed the money we spent. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed is giving us too much money, and the low-growth Biden economy will provide too few goods. And Americans are right to be concerned. I'm Jerry Boyer.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending.
Welcome back, America. Sometimes I want to go hyper-local with my politics, especially when I know the candidate. His name is John Moorlach. He's running for Orange County Supervisor. The vote is soon. And the reason I go hyper-local is because all politics are local. And in Orange County, California, the public employee unions are attempting to take over the county, and John Moorlach stands between them and Orange and that victory. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, you.
Am I right? This is a public employees versus the rest of the people of Orange County election.
Spot on. And the public employee unions are spending an incredible amount of money to make sure that I don't get reelected.
Now, John, you've been a supervisor before. You're running against a Democrat, Katrina Foley. This is a Republican county, but they don't put R&D behind your names. How are you going to get the Republicans and the independents and even the fiscally conservative Democrats to vote for Moorlach and not Katrina, who will be a real hurricane for Orange County?
Well, the traditional methods, obviously mail pieces to Republicans, high propensity, but we've been making phone calls as well. My team has already made over 200,000 phone calls to high propensity Republicans, no party preference, and we're getting good results, and let's hope that they turn their ballots in.
Now, John, I am a big believer that a vote for anyone not named Moorlach is a vote for Katrina. Do you believe it? I don't think any other Republican on the ballot, and a number have gotten in. I got nothing against them, but it's a thrown away, it's a wasted vote.
Right. It's a spoiler. Yeah, a vote for someone else is a vote for Foley, no doubt.
And so what do you think it feels like? You've run a lot. You've always won. Have you ever lost? Oh, you lost the first election, and then Orange County went bankrupt.
I lost that one, and then I lost last November in my reelection effort for the state Senate.
Did they play dirty in that?
The union spent $400 million more than I raised against me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why do the unions hate you so much?
Because I don't take their money. I'm independent. I'm willing to call a spade, and when it comes to the issues in Sacramento and in Orange County. So forgive me, I happen to be a taxpayer representative, not a union representative.
I also think it's because you're an accountant.
Well, that's a skill set that comes in real handy. I can do math.
You can do math. Well, you used to make presentations when I was on the Orange County Children and Families Commission. Everybody else would nod off, and I would throw darts at you because nobody else understands this stuff. But if you're not an accountant, you can't really figure out what the pension crisis is.
Right, and we could see it coming for the last 20 years, and now it's here, and we're watching public employee pension plan contributions crowd out everything else. We're seeing cities in California that have had to lay off 25% of their police and fire departments just to make their budget. And so we've got to get real here and start talking about the elephant in the room. And unfortunately, unions seem to personalize it when you talk about pensions. They say, oh, they're going after my pension. No, we're trying to make sure that when you retire, you actually get your pension.
That's it. They're writing checks they cannot cash, and they're getting promises of payments that will never appear. So, John Moorlach, let's once again review. When is the election? Have ballots already been mailed? When do they have to be back, if in fact they've gotten to your house?
The election is next Tuesday, March 9. The ballots have been mailed out. Voting centers are open, and everything has to be mailed in or turned in or, provided to someone to bring in by March 9th.
So Katrina is a disaster. Anyone not named Moorlach is a wasted vote, and you got to get him in now. And John, come back next week on election morning, will you?
I would love to talk to you again. You appreciate it.
It is always a great pleasure. John Moorlach in Orange County. Watch that space, because I don't think they're going to pull this off, no matter how much money they spend against them. I think people are onto them this time. Thank you, John. Let me go and go back to what Robert O'Brien had to say on Tuesday night. We were talking with Henry Kissinger at the Nixon Library. Robert O'Brien, the former National Security Advisor, said this in his question, cut number 28.
Dr. Kissinger, you were there for detente and the initial arms control talks. You were in those secret talks with China. You did talks with Pakistan and India. You did shuttle diplomacy to end the Yom Kippur War, and of course received the Nobel Peace Prize for your role in the Paris Accords and negotiating with the North Vietnamese. So these are some of the most consequential negotiations and diplomatic talks that have taken place in the last 100 years. Based on your experience, what I'd like to ask you for the young diplomats, for the lawyers, for the business folks who are involved in international negotiations, what advice and counsel do you have for them as they go about their talks and their negotiations, whether it's in the private sector or public sector, to achieve successful ends to their negotiation processes? And that if you've got some time, maybe you could just let us know which of the negotiations or deals that you were involved in was the most meaningful to you personally. Maybe not the most famous, but the most meaningful to you personally.
I want to say one more word about the transition from Nixon to Ford, which is to pay tribute to President Ford, who came into a very difficult situation in which there were many demoralized people, and he introduced a level of calm and commitment that stabilized everything, and it performed extremely well as president. Now, on the question of the negotiations, when I became security advisor, I had never conducted a negotiation internationally before. I was assigned by Nixon to do to turn out most of his key negotiations, because he felt that I understood what he was trying to achieve. So let me talk about in response to your question. I attempted in any negotiation I conducted, first of all, to be absolutely sure that I understood what the president had in mind, and to understand not only the formal position of what we should say at the next negotiation, but what he was trying to achieve, and not only the tangible, but the intangible ones. So I had many conversations with Nixon I saw him practically every day that we were both in town. And so I made sure I knew that. And I made sure before I left on a negotiation to leave a substantial memo to him on what I understood we were trying to achieve. And now I was going to do it. But once I was on the road, I reported to him every day. But we were never in a position where I had to say to my negotiating partner, I have to check this back in Washington. I went ahead. he got his report at the end of every day. He could have stopped the negotiation, or he could have said, you should have said something else. He never bothered with that as long as he was convinced that we were going in the direction that he wanted to go. Everybody has his own negotiating method. And Mike was an effective person in his way, and maybe he followed some of the same principles. I try to understand what the opposite number was likely to want to achieve. And so I didn't want to spend a lot of time on tactical issues of the moment. And I usually began my conversations, my negotiation, by telling my opposite number what I was trying to achieve. And I was quite honest about it. I told them what I wanted to bring about. And I said that so that I said, you can understand what I'm trying to do. On my first trip to China, we hadn't had any contact for 25 years. If you read the discussions between Joe and Lai and me, they sound like two college professors. And they're all public now, discussing academic issues on, and we were both reasoning without agreement the same way. Namely, I would encounter him very often in the future, and I wanted to know where he was heading then. And anyway, it was the first meeting after 25 years. And I had to bring back a report on whether it was useful to continue. So that was my general approach. And I tried to leave details to the point when we had an agreement in principle. But I'm not saying that this is the only way to negotiate. I can only tell you that now you asked me what was an important moment.
I think, if you can get Henry Kissinger to talk about how to negotiate, it's a great night. The Nixon Seminar. We have posted the first one. That won't be the case. You have to be a member of the Nixon Library to actually watch them. You have to be a member of the seminar to participate. There are only 12 members of the seminar, 2 co-chairs and a special guest. And Dr. Kissinger is the honorary chair, and he joined us for that one. But because it was Dr. Kissinger, and he's 97 and amazing, we did post the entire video at nixonseminar.com if you want to see who the superstars of the business are. And they'll be staffing the next administration. And there is going to be, up at HughHewitt.com, we've got Dan Crenshaw. The audio is, and the transcript is now posted. And when he says that President Biden has got a diminished cognitive capacity, that's going to make some news, I think. I think that's going to make some news. We will see. Time to talk about ReliefFactor.com. Chuck Box is coming up after the break, America. Our long interview, most of it will be on the podcast. Some of it will be on live. It'll be about this book, Dark Sky, an amazing book. It's really one of his best ever. But there goes the book. ReliefFactor.com. There it is. There's the bag. You can't miss it. I tell you about it 3 times a day. I take it in the first hour and remind you 2 more times. If you're a new affiliate, and we got a lot of new affiliates coming in, I'm honored to be the person who is now in the Rush Limbaugh slot in many places. I can't replace Rush. That's not possible. I don't even presume to do that. What I do tell you is if you are missing Rush, so am I. And one of the things you'll find that is characteristic of my show is a lot of news, breaking news always. If a headline happens, I'll tell you about it. And the occasional author like C.J. Box and a lot of Relief Factor hits. Why? Because I want you to live a long time. I want you to be active. I want you to be aging well. I want you to be out there running, skiing, playing tennis, whatever. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95, get you started. Come back for C.J. Box. Stay for the news. Come for C.J. Box. I'll be right back.